Here.
Church.
Here.
Ryan Hill, I think also said he could not make it. Commissioner Tharp. Commissioner Lee.
Here.
And Commissioner Bullock. We don't have any changes to the agenda, but we do have minutes from October 20th. Do you have a motion to approve those? Everybody have a chance to review them?
I didn't get to attend that meeting, so.
Okay,
I reviewed them, yeah, they're fine, I moved to approve the minutes from the 20th.
great. Can I get a second?
I second.
Okay, all in favor? Aye?
I.
Are you good with names? Sorry, I forgot to. Okay. Jason. All right, and we have new business. We have file 25-19, which is the Alpenflow staff continuation to December 8th, as well as file 25-31, kind of go hand in hand, group camp code amendment for section 5.2.6, also staff continuation to December 8th in order to remedy a public notice error. Is there anything additional?
I think that covers it.
Okay, I know we have an applicant here, okay. Do you have a motion to continue, and we'll have to read both of those file numbers.
Okay, I'll move to continue file 25-19 to December 8th, individual move,
Sure.
okay.
In a second.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All in favor, aye?
I.
Okay,
I move to continue file 25-31 to December 8th.
Second.
okay, all in favor? Aye.
I.
Great. Okay, December. Bryce, water enterprise presentation.
Okay. Alright, yeah, so when I was asked to do this, I was really hoping I had some more like legal progress for you guys, but it's been a while since I presented about the water to the planning commission, so I just wanted to give new members a chance to get some info and then just kind of give you guys an update of where we're at on the timeline. When this plan is gonna hopefully be implemented. I need to open the email.
It was so fast.
And it did look like a Commissioner Tharp joined us too.
And how do I get this to share?
Hi.
Hi.
Sorry I missed roll call.
It's okay. I'll forgive you this time.
Just share. This side of Okay. Well, Sarah Mudge is here. Before she left, or before her term was up, she really helped on the water stuff and kind of got us to the point where I took over. Last summerish, I started learning and taking over, and then before Sarah left office, we were able to pass the water marketing policy. And so basically we have a court case that allows us to use the small amount of water rights that Lake County owns in a pretty a blanket way, you could say. It's called a blanket augmentation plan. But that just gives us the ability to use it throughout the county. It didn't really give us the way we could use it throughout the county. That was an internal decision, so through a lot of sessions last year and the year before, we kind of laid out the limitations of the water plan, the limitations of the water portfolio we had, and then the needs we're trying to address. And so through that, we created a water marketing policy, which is resolution 2439, if you want to look it up, but it's 20 pages that kind of just goes through a lot of the technical elements that I'll just discuss in brief tonight.
I mean, if it's an active registered vehicle.
Alright, so I just want to make it clear, my name is Bryce Ehrlich, right? I'm a Water Resource Program Manager for Lake County. I am the county's staff member that handles water resources full time. But I'm part of the team. I don't do it alone. I handle everything on the ground here in the county, but I also work with community planning and development, public works, parks, rec, and open space, just to kind of clue them in and also get their feedback on how we should be running our water resources. And through that feedback, we came up with some of the regulations we have in the water marketing policy that I'll go over. I have a contracted engineering firm, Brown and Caldwell. We went through an RFP process in 2024 and got a new engineering firm, and they've been fantastic. I talk to Adam and Sky every week. I talked to Adam this morning about stuff, so they're really responsive. They're actually rather affordable for what they give us, and I have nothing but good things to say about them. As far as our legal team goes, we had to fire our old water counsel, so opposite impression. And so we are now going through the RFP process to select a new water attorney. Matt Hobbs is our new county attorney, so he just started a few weeks ago. He's been great. He's very former litigator. He's very by the book, and so I have a lot of confidence that he's gonna give us a good attorney, and also just one that's gonna be a lot more responsive to our needs. That was what we were just struggling with, our old attorney kind of treating us like a tiny little insignificant player, and we're going through so much change right now that we really need a more responsive, more engaged attorney. And we need someone that can think creatively too. Around a lot of these issues that we have, a lot of them, if they're water related, they're probably gonna require a court case. And so we need a water attorney that we can go with these ideas to and just, throw it. Look, here's an idea we have. Is this viable? Right? That is so valuable to have from a council, and we just haven't had it. So that's what we're looking for. And within the next month, I expect that RFP process to go rather quickly. So we should have a full-time water attorney again by the end of the month, or by the end of November. So Lake County, through a bunch of different history, Lake County has a small portfolio of water, right? So we have one ditch right, the Dairy Ditch number 3 right, that we still yield water from. And then through a bunch of negotiations, the city of Aurora, who our water infrastructure is tied to, and our water plan is now kind of tied to the hip to, Aurora also provides us a bit of water every year out of their Trans Mountain accounts. So the first bit of water that comes through, or I guess you could say the first bit of water that's called and prioritized that comes under the mountains, is 40 acre feet reserved for Lake County's use every year. And that's a use it or lose it, right? If we don't use all of it, Aurora doesn't give us a little bit extra the next year. It's 40 acre feet a year. And then whatever natural yield we get out of the Dairy Ditch, number 3. So, in water, we can come back to this map, and I also want to bring up another map where we can dive in a little bit, closer to it and look at some individual cases that are going on right now. But this is the area that Lake County can serve under our blanket augmentation plan with our water rights. So our water rights come from, a very specific stream, but because it's so close to the Arkansas River, we can then what's called augment that water, right? We can take that natural stream flowing water, credit it as going to the river system, and then we can use those credits we've accumulated to offset water use throughout the rest of this service area. Historically, most of our water goes to irrigate the golf course, right? So we measure the water down towards Twin Lakes, we say this is how much water our irrigation right yielded, and then through a fancy paper exchange with the division engineer's office in Pueblo, we say actually we're gonna use that water farther upstream at the golf course for irrigation. So in water we use a lot of different, industry lingo. The biggest one is acre foot. I know David knows acre feet in and out, but acre feet is essentially a football field sized area, 1 foot deep of water. And that's just, when we're talking about large volumes of water, we can't talk about them in gallons anymore because then we're into millions of gallons right away. So we use a larger measurement unit, which is acre foot, which is roughly 360,000 gallons of water. And then we also have an augmentation unit. So that's a little bit of our water, right? A unit of our water that we've allocated that we then augment to another use. Be that the golf course, be that a new house's well that needs water. So we're augmenting and water means using it for a different purpose. Lake County, like I just said, we have 50% of dairy ditch number 3. That yields an average of 34 acre-feet a year. And then our Aurora Trans Basin is 40 acre-feet a year, firm supply. Key point is that that's super limited. You know, the Hayden Pond that we all drive by on Highway 24, that's roughly 50 acre-feet of storage, the entire thing. So if you get all of our flowing water every year, it's about 1.5 Hayden Ponds worth of water. My Bible in my office is Water Court Case 98 CW 173. It's 68 pages long, and it dictates what our water is, what sources it is, and how we can use it. And so that court case took almost 20 years to get adjudicated, and it was finally adjudicated right when Sarah came into office and was able to start working on the actual technical elements of the blanket augmentation plan that the county needed to do to use our water. And mostly that comes from measurement, right? To be able to use an amount of water, you have to measure how much is coming in and how much is going out. And so Sarah focused mostly on the physical infrastructure that needed to get put in so we could actually measure all this water. So we put an augmentation station or a measurement station up on the base of Mount Albert that comes and takes water from Bartlett Gulch. And that measures our dairy ditch number 3 water. We also put a staff gauge in Hayden Pond so that we could measure how full or how empty the pond was. Did you do any other physical infrastructure while I'm on that?
We just did, as-built surveying.
Had to do an as-built survey of the Hayden Pond to get an actual scientific measurement of how much water could go in and out of it. And that's also, because it's, you know, every reservoir has a dead pool, which is the amount of water that's below the intake or outlet device that you just can't get rid of. And Hayden Reservoir was actually designed with a larger than necessary dead pool to give fish refuge. If the pond ever was drained to this, you know, that extent, there's what's called a fish refugio on the bottom. That's an actual deep trench that's just meant to give the fish a few more days of life until more water comes into the pond. We formed the Water Projects Enterprise, which is the state statute thing and allows us to, you know, collect more money every year than we give back. It's de-bruised, are not subject to TABOR rules. So that's essential, right, for an enterprise that's meant to gather money to then invest in huge capital projects. We have to be able to gather money and keep it from year to year. And then to this point, our current uses of Lake County water, what we're working on getting, you know, adding to those uses, but right now we irrigate the Mount Massive Golf Course. That takes about 40 to 45 acre-feet a year of our portfolio. And then we also pay for the evaporation off of Hayden Recreation Pond. So Hayden Recreation Pond, the evaporation alone takes about 25% of our total water every year. And that's, to me, crazy seeing how small it is and that it's frozen 6 months a year. That's how much evaporation there is. So you think about the reservoirs down further in the valley towards Pueblo, just think about how much they're losing to evaporation that they have to account for before they could even think about delivery. But now we have this ability to augment to all kinds of other uses. So we're replacing water, you can have water, you can use your water in its original place and time, and otherwise you have to store it and really release it when you use it to make the river whole is essentially what you're trying to do, right? You're trying to give the water to the river that was already allocated to it by the original ranch being irrigated or whatever. A lot of that water that goes into the ranch, not all of it stays with the grass and goes to the grass, right? A lot of it returns to the river or the stream flow. When you change your water right to be used for something else, you still owe all that extra water that wasn't consumed by the grass or now consumed by wells. You still owe all that back to the river, called return flow obligations. So we can augment though, you know, throughout the year. The examples of things we can augment now that are new would be wells, you know, new wells throughout the service area. We can augment new stream diversions, and we can also augment loss to ground absorption or evaporation. We can augment irrigation to fields. But the big part is that any natural augmentation or surface augmentation, because of groundwater loss and evaporation, it's just a lot more intensive of a water use. Wells Cause you have a tiny little straw, you're only sucking up what you need off the faucet at that given time. They're a pretty efficient way to use water, right, volume wise. So, 1/10 of an acre foot, we've been assured by our engineers, is sufficient to provide the amount of water that one house needs, or an EQR. An EQR, that's actually defined in our decree, so it's not any single family residence, it's a single family residence up to a certain size. It's roughly equivalent to what the sanitation district says is an EQR, 4.2. Right, it covers it up to a 4.2. Anything above that, you might be using more water and you would need an additional augmentation unit. So with our augmentation units, this is what we've decided to do. I'm sorry, this is an old presentation, so I'm kind of backtracking on myself, but because we have such a limited amount of water, we can't entertain every single use. Because certain uses, if I were to irrigate an acre of ranch land, that would probably take up the majority of our water for a given year, right? So we have to be really careful with, yes, we have a water portfolio, yes, we have this new ability, what can we use it for? What's most efficient to use it for? And so the county commissioners, and part of our water marketing policy, is that it was decided to limit our water portfolio for now, for use in in-house domestic wells, for livestock watering, and then for commercial use. And that's kind of open-ended, but those are all case by case. Every single commercial use that would use this water would more than likely come in front of this board for a land use application as well. So commercial use was kind of left open-ended. There are some limits to what a maximum amount of water a commercial operation could use. But it was left open-ended intentionally because this policy was designed for the future, and we just didn't know, nor could we predict what applications are gonna come in front of you and whether they'll be worthy of using our water or not. So by limiting it to in-house domestic wells, livestock, and commercial use, you're limiting it to only those well uses, which are the most efficient water uses. I would like to open it up to other uses eventually when we have more water. This enterprise operations, this is, just.
What are other uses besides like irrigating land?
Other uses would be
Bigger
environmental uses, like for instance, like a ornamental reflective pond.
Oh,
That
yeah, like I wanna
reflects
put a pond in my
Like,
backyard.
like there's like a really scenic barn that people wanna preserve the view of. There's a pond in front of it.
Oh.
Right? They need but that pond is actually an artificial structure, so they need a
Water
source of
rights.
water for it.
Mm.
We, like the barn pond discussion in Twin Lakes, the county just doesn't have the amount of water necessary to supply that ornamental pond. So that's basically what I'm saying, is environmental and ornamental uses of that water are kind of off limits for now.
Yeah, just trying to think of what else isn't.
But like, eventually, like, I wanna be able to give Ray Dawson a source of water to irrigate his small hayfield.
Mhm.
You know, that's something that takes way more water than we have, but, might be there's an environmental benefit, there's an agricultural heritage benefit to that, and there's a landowner that's been trying for 20 years to get water that can't. So, that's another thing, we could look at.
Bryce, would like someone just wanting to augment an existing well for landscaping their residential home? Is that off the table as well?
It's a good question. No, it's not, because it's limited to in-house domestic well use. There is the livestock well use, and that was allowed because if you look at our decree, it actually defines how much water a head of cattle or a head of livestock would use, and it's really small. It's 11 gallons per head per day. So,
Does the in-house use go towards ADUs?
yes.
Okay.
Yes, this plan was designed to allow a pathway for ADUs in places that don't have that ability right now. Yep. I just wanted to get into this though, because this was definitely formulated based on planning commission discussions, which is that I think there was a concern among the planning commission and planning staff that, okay, we have this new service available we can augment and we can have new wells everywhere. And there is a fear that that would either be taken up speculatively by developers or something and held onto and then, you know, sold third party for more money. And so we actually put regulations in to limit, you have to put your augmentation unit into service within a certain amount of time, so you can't sit on it speculatively. But also, we don't know what areas of the county are gonna have the most demand for this new service. And so we put in a phased availability of, even though that there's a very limited amount of water, only a certain portion of that limited amount of water is going to be available for the first 3 years. This says year 1, year 2, year 3, 25, you know, you can just move this up. Year 1 is actually gonna be 2026. So this is just basically saying that in our first year, we're not going to sell more than 39 augmentation units. So there can't be more than 39 homes, 39 ADUs, 39 livestock wells going in more, you know, in year 1. Year 2, a little bit more becomes available, so you have 46, year 3, 54, and in year 4, the remainder of whatever's left would be available for contracting. And the reason this is a 4-year schedule or 4-year phase-in is to give staff, the county, planning commission, commissioners time to weigh in. If we do see in year 1 and year 2, this service being used in a way that was unintended or maybe not the way that we wanna see it being used, there's a chance to catch it and to adjust the regulations before all the water's gone. Because until we acquire more water rights, once we're done with this, we're done, right? There's a limit to this new service, it's gonna be great, and then we hit our upper limit and we're kind of back to where we are. Or we're back then, we'll be back to where we are now, which is just in a constrained environment.
So you have 74 acre feet now, about, would you say 40 of that goes to the golf course? And 25-30% goes?
17 acre feet goes to Hayden Pond.
Okay. So then that leaves you're accounting for the balance with this approach.
We're
'Cause
coming
that's
to the
only-
balance with a buffer.
Yeah, cause that's only 5.4 acre feet on 54 ADUs, right? And an AU is a 0.1 acre foot,
Yes, correct,
So
exactly, yes.
5.4.
So this is cumulative too, but this is saying that in year 1, we'll have 13 acre feet total available that we know are secure, firm yield for the enterprise. But we're only gonna use a third of that.
Okay.
And the numbers don't all add up because we have a buffer too, because in
Yeah.
these first 3 years of learning, we wanna make sure we have a reserve of water if we are over or under anywhere else.
Yeah, is that 74 firm? Is that what they
It's
call it?
not, no,
No?
it's 40 acre firm, and then the 34 acre feet on the dairy 3 is variable. 34 is our
okay.
20-year average yield.
Okay,
And when you say until we acquire more water rights, if the county ever, this is just cause I'm fascinated, if the county acquires more water rights, do we start over with that whole like 20-year court process, or can it just go right
If
back
the county
into-
acquires more water rights, we will have to go back to water court. And we will have to get the water right in question adjudicated. So our augmentation plan as it exists is just for the water we own. And there's a tiny little buffer where we can add some Twin Lakes shares to it without going back to court. But anything else, we're gonna have to go back to court. We're currently party to a few court cases, and we'll get into that, and then I wanna end with like the future plan of the county. Even if we don't acquire more water rights, we gotta go back to court, so.
So if we were to, so there could be an opportunity for individual who owns a Twin Lakes share who's not using all of that to come in under our aug plan. We could help administer their water, we could add to it, so there is a certain amount that we could.
And it's very small, I believe it's only up to like 6 or 8 acre feet. It's not like a subdivision can come in and give us a bunch of water and we can do that, it's just that we have a little bit of flexibility, you could say.
Well, I think, you know, what a property owner developer looks at is if they go out to to acquire an augmentation plan, they've got a year and a half or 2 years in water court, you know, with over $100,000 worth of fees to do it. So it's a huge benefit to them to come under this program. You know, the other side of that is, I think the question of where do we wanna use that precious water? Not just the types of uses, but the types of projects that really benefit our community the most. And thinking through all that, right?
Yeah, and I can go through because I wanna be clear that this is a new ability. It's going to offer some new service for the county, but there are regulations that limit the amount that can be used in any one application, which basically was meant to preclude it being used for subdivisions. This is meant to be, like, for lack of a better term, this is meant for more like the everyday user in Lake County. The person that already owns a property and wants to build an ADU, or the person that already owns a property and wants to split it in two so they can build their children a home. That's all kind of allowed within the plan. But if a big developer comes in and says, I wanna buy 30 shares, we just don't have the ability to do that, and it's not even allowed in our regulations. But yes, there is the benefit of, you know, for those smaller users that have their own Twin Lakes share, they would still have to go to court, and they'd have to go through the entire court process to adjudicate a tiny little share to get it all squared away, and this could skip that process. Skip that process, and they'd still pay us a fair amount of money. So this fee schedule, you know, I just want to touch on this briefly, but you guys need to know that the inclusion fee is $9,000 per augmentation unit. So if you need two, it'd be 9,000 times two. And then you have all the application fees and everything like that. The inclusion fee is based, it's not out of thin air. It was based on 2 data points. It was based on Parkville tap fees and Twin Lakes water shares. So it's meant to be, and it has to be, market derived. It doesn't have to be perfect, but it has to have market justification. So our engineers actually did a study to, you know, justify this price for the inclusion fee. And then the operations and maintenance fee, that's meant to match Parkville's monthly service rate. So, you know, it's not gonna be super cheap, but I just heard that, Leadville Sands charging $18,000 or something now for a tap fee. So it's still incredible, you know, it's still very affordable, and this is also, you gotta think, this is also going to places where they can't get Leadville sanitation and Parkville water service, so it's equivalent, but it's their option. And, you know, this is meant to make the county money. This is meant to be a revenue positive development. Right, Sarah? It's not meant to, it's meant to be like the landfill, it's meant to be a positive development, or, you know, not operating in the red every year.
And it covers the cost of staff. like
Correct,
yourself.
yes, so the way we budgeted is that the inclusion fees, as we build this, the inclusion fees will cover staff, and then at full build out, the O&M will cover a full staff, or at least the majority of it. It'll at least be able to cover our engineering and lawyer fees. So maybe if I go away, we'll still be able to get the people doing all the right regulatory and administrative things. This is the meat of it though, this is the maximum use per allocation. Can I hide this?
You can just like move it to the side and,
I think it's under more, and I think you can,
It's okay, we're skipping in-house and domestic livestock, so, if you have an existing parcel, right, most of the existing parcels in Lake County, if they existed before 1972, they have an in-house exempt well. That's how we've operated to this point, that's how we've been able to muddle through, is that they're exempt, they have a really limited well right, but they can still develop a home on that lot. This would allow up to 3 units per lot. And so, 3 units is very intentional, that's either, you know, that's enough to cover a duplex or a large home and an ADU. The one out of those 3 units for any given lot is reserved for an ADU. Because this was also, you know, it was a priority of the prior board and the current board to increase our housing stock and to lower the barriers to ADUs. And so one of those units per lot is reserved for that purpose. We're allowing hot tubs. A lot of water districts don't. Lot splits in commercial use, this is where we really had a lot of in-depth discussion. Because a minor subdivision would allow you, what is a minor sub, up to 4 or
Up to 4.
Up to 4 times 3, then you're talking 12 units on one application, which is a lot. And so you can use this with a minor subdivision of 1 lot into 2. And those 2 lots then have 3 units on each. So a total of 6 6 augmentation units on any single application is the maximum. That 6 AU maximum is then what was applied to the commercial uses as well. Right, so that's the maximum you're ever gonna see on any one application, incentivizing less than that. But that's a manageable amount, it's a large chunk at once, but it's not the whole baby at once. So this is where it gets a little complicated, and this is where like the Angel View discussion comes in, because I'm sure if you haven't heard about it yet, Angel View 2, the second part of that subdivision, they wanna come in under the AUG plan. They need more than 6 AUs, right? So there's also an option built into the water marketing policy for subdivisions that if they dedicate 50% or more of desired use of outside water rights, basically if you give us over 50% of what you require, what you're asking from the enterprise, we will entertain the application. Not to say we'll approve it, but we would entertain it if you were compensating the enterprise with water. At that point, you'd basically be coming into the enterprise to skip the legal court process, and the savings would come from the court process and the timeline.
Because they have water rights, they're giving them to you.
They're gonna give us their water rights to skip that process, and we administer it under our plan for them. Does that make sense?
But you gave them the water rights to begin with.
We wouldn't until they have to dedicate their water to us before we would adjudicate their plan. Because it's not 1-to-1, because they might be giving us outside water rights that aren't usable in our plan.
Oh, okay.
But it's still a water rights resource that we can use elsewhere, right, and start to, compensate ourselves somehow. Yeah, it's a lot of moving parts. I confuse myself even talking about it.
So people have expressed interest already in this program.
I would say my day one demand is at least 10 augmentation units. And that's not new growth. That's a lot of people just trying to, like your neighbor's Ross 2 subdivision, their day one demand. There's another fellow, a little on the other side of the neighborhood, he's day one demand, his name is Mark Nunn, he's been trying to build for years.
He's been in water court a long time, yeah.
Yeah, and he hasn't had the ability, this will give him that ability. So there's a lot of day one demand that we already know about, because it's just people that have been in the queue, they've been talking to Ann for years about this. We've had subdivision developers express interest. So that's another reason we wanna limit it, right? Like, once that the day one demand is great for me, because it makes my budget pencil out next year. But it's also, any amount we give up is water we don't have in the future, right? And that's the thing, is that we can lease water year to year in any amount we want, and we can put conditions on that lease that say if the water doesn't come, you don't get the water. The second we contract water for a well in a house, that has to be the most firm water supply there is, because we don't ever wanna be in a
Can't take it
position
back, yeah.
where we're telling people they don't have the water in their well.
No sunset.
Yeah.
So, I'm sorry, I just need a clarifying question. So based on having to go back and, to water court, if we receive that water dedication, it could potentially trigger us to have to go back, right?
If we wanted to use it in our blanket augmentation plan, so we.
Actually put it to use.
Right, but we could be in a position where they use 6 augmentation units and they give us Twin Lake shares for that. And then we use that Twin Lake shares for our golf course lease. And so that even though it's not part of our blanket augmentation plan, we can still use that water as part of our overall water resources.
And so then that puts more back into our
Yeah,
I see, so, oh, okay.
and then, you know, the
I know, oh my gosh, it's like,
Yeah.
Yeah, and then like
That's
the theory would be that if we can entice enough people to dedicate enough water to us, then it makes sense, we have a critical mass to go back to water court. Right, but if we only have a few acre feet, we can move our system around and make that work for
Oh,
everyone.
that's great, that's good, okay.
Oh, look at this, I didn't even change this step, but
These things are important, they're
this was what I just pulled the one that I presented to the town hall before we had the water marketing policy. But I can go through this and just update you, right? We've passed our water marketing policy. New Aurora IGA, okay, I really wanna touch on this because I've been working on this, Sarah started working on this in 2022. I took over ownership of it in summer 2024. Me and Aurora have been done negotiating staff to staff since spring 2025. It's entirely a legal process now. And we've had some legal challenges, so that's been a huge delay for me and it's been honestly a point of frustration. But this is my number one priority is get the IGA across the line. The Aurora IGA, because they give us over half of our water every year, or provide us half of our water, they don't really give it to us, but it's it comes from their system. And the other thing I really want to emphasize is that when Aurora signed on to give us that 40 acre feet, it was because our entire water system, we hitched our ride to Box Creek Reservoir, where the gravel mining application is right now. That is the site of the future Box Creek Reservoir, owned and planned by Aurora. Their original timeline when they were doing all this was 2025. Now they're saying 2050 at least, right? There's a lot more to be done before that. But to sign on to that plan, Lake County owns 20% of the future Box Creek Reservoir. So we own 20% of the space in that reservoir, not, the physical footprint. At 25,000 acre feet, which was the last design for Box Creek, that's 5,000 acre feet of storage in Box Creek that Lake County owns. And it's, even though it's not built, it's one of our largest assets in the water rights portfolio, is this theoretical 5,000 acre feet. And if I'm talking about 74 acre feet, and dividing that up, and our use is 5,000 acre feet, honestly, is just way more than the county will ever need. And that's intentional, because that 5,000 acre feet, we can just lease it back to Aurora, and it's a big cash cow. And that's kind of the promise there, is that we're gonna have this incredible revenue resource once the reservoir's online. We just gotta muddle through until we get to that reservoir. And that made a lot more sense in 2000 when they were saying 2025. It's harder to swallow in 2025 when they're saying 2050 now. And so, it's just an ongoing point of discussion with Aurora is, okay, if we're not gonna if Lake County's future is contingent on your plans for Box Creek, which keep getting extended out, we need a solution in the meantime that makes sense for us. And so Aurora in this new IGA, they're kind of being nice to us and they're allowing us, we're putting in some provisions that make our water resources a lot more flexible with Aurora's help. And the biggest aspect of that is what I call the parking agreement in Hayden Reservoir. So Hayden Reservoir is the only storage vessel Lake County owns. There's Twin Lakes and Turquoise Lakes, those are already fully accounted for by bigger players, Colorado Springs, Aurora, Pueblo, Bureau of Reclamation. We don't have any ability to get into those reservoirs even though they're here. And so the big thing to expand our flexibility is we have to have some storage. And Hayden is it, as far as what we have available now. It was built in 2001 with Colorado, or GOCO money, which is like an outdoor recreation funding source, and they put a regulation that we couldn't use it for water storage for 20 years. So 2021, that provision expired, we can use it for storage now, but in the meantime, it's become the most important recreational resource in that part of the county, just one of our shining jewels, I think. And so if we were to use it for water storage, the water level would be going way down and way up and it would kill the fish, basically. And so one of the big things I worked with Aurora on is how to find a way to keep the reservoir level the same as it ever was, no one will ever know, but now Lake County and Aurora will be exchanging water in Hayden for storage. And so as Lake County needs to release water from our storage, Aurora will backfill that water into storage and vice versa. So the public won't even know, cause there won't ever be a change in the reservoir, but me and Aurora will be fighting back and forth on a spreadsheet every month, just making sure. You know, who owns, on a month to month, who owns what percentage of Hayden Reservoir water. And the other big benefit of that is that we can use it for storage, so that if we don't use all 40 acre feet from Aurora every year, we can bank the extras. We can have Aurora deliver us our 40 acre feet, and we'll put the extra in Hayden and store it for ourselves. The other thing is, if Aurora has 50% of the water in Hayden, they're gonna pay 50% of the evaporation. And so we get the immediate gain of clawing back some of that evaporative loss that we pay out every year.
I'd give them the water on top. You keep the bottom water.
Yeah, that's right. We're only interested in the bottom 50%.
Yeah.
Ours doesn't evaporate.
Yeah.
Yeah, you guys count for that.
The big thing I have to work on is getting the upper river ditch functional now. The upper river ditch is a beaver complex nightmare. The upper river ditch comes off of the Arkansas main stem on the Smith Ranch and kind of hugs the river and goes by that ranch. I can't even describe it to you, their name, but it goes by ranch before it hits Hayden, and it's just gotten destroyed by beavers. And so we have to go in and do some big work because we need to be able to accurately measure the water going in and the water going out of that reservoir, even if we're replacing it 1-to-1 with other water, right? We still need to be able to account for it properly. But we do have division engineer approval. That's the other thing, you know, we have everything lined up. It's when the IGA with Aurora is done, the next day I can start accepting applications for augmentation. The one last thing we're adding the Aurora IGA to is we're adding more points of diversion. So we're basically allowing Aurora to deliver Aurora is allowing us to request our water to be delivered at several more spots throughout the county, which gives us a lot more flexibility. You know, we can call for a certain amount of water to go to Hayden and a certain amount of water to go to Twin Lakes, or a certain amount of water to go to Lake Fork. And before it was pretty limited to like 1 or 2 or 3 diversion points, now it's gonna be 5 or 6. So it's all just we gotta make this as flexible as possible because we need to be able to augment people's water 365 days a year. It can't be tied to the way the water flows off the mountain anymore. And now, just to end it, that's just the basics. I really wanna talk though more specific. I gotta pull up that assessor map. Some other layers. Okay, this is the area
You'll have to
shaded.
go, sorry, you'll have to go to Zoom and
That's right, thank
share
you.
the password.
I've been using it for years and I still. The area shaded in blue is the augmentation area. So we can augment everywhere in the county. And then if you really look, you know, especially with the parcels underneath it, vast portions of the augmentation area are in public land and East Side Mining District. So functionally, this area is gonna get the most demand from the Twin Lakes area. It's gonna get the most demand in Lost Canyon, right, where you have those larger lots. And then as well as the E Hill area. Panarch is its own thing. They've actually had some improvements in their water system, so I'm feeling more confident about them. But you know, you have Angel View over here, Gordon Acres, Established Wells. I really think this is the area we're gonna see the most demand from this. And so that's what I want you guys to be aware of. there's a current application, we have a few court case applications, right? We have the barn pond's in court right now. They have a special water supply plan, or substitute water supply plan rather. So they have a lease of Pueblo water, and they have a temporary plan that they can use for up to 5 years to use that Pueblo water going through the Twin Lakes ditch system and the barn pond system. But that's a temporary plan, so to make that permit, they have to go back to court to get an adjudication, and so they're doing that process right now. Lake County has not signed on as an opposer, or we haven't signed on to anything yet. We have the Erickson Wellfield case, which I think I've talked to both of you guys about on the phone. This one, Lake County has signed on as an opposer, and that's not to say that we're opposed to the application. It's just that in water court, you have to sign on as an opposer to have standing in court and to make sure that our water rights concerns are heard. And so, you know, we're taking this, just our engineers have submitted their analysis, and our concern is that the math is too perfect on the Erickson Wellfield case. You know, he has one Twin Lake share, and his math turns out to be using exactly one Twin Lake share. And I think, you know, in reality, we like to see a little bit more buffer and, yeah, grace for changes in the natural environment. So we have that court case, and I don't think you guys have heard it from a land use perspective either.
No.
So, you guys are familiar with it, but I'll just say it for the record, yeah, I believe he's applying for up to 13 wells, correct? Yeah, so we will see how that one goes. And then I don't wanna get into the specifics, cause I know this is an application that's being heard by you guys right now, but Titan Gold has also applied, and they're in water court now to turn their SWSPs into a permit decree. And that was, requested by the State Division of Water Resources to go to court. And Lake County has signed on as an opposer to this application, and the state of Colorado has as well. And like I said, that's not to say they're opposed, that's just to make sure that they're in the room when the negotiations are going on. I found a study just this last week that took the Forest Service 3 years of wandering around in this area of the county to try to figure out what the water rights really are. So it's easier for us to look back with hindsight and be like, man, Lake County made some crazy decisions, we got rid of some water. The water rights were not known or defined in this area until Lake County bought them and started adjudicating them. There was, you know, the Forest Service owns a ton of water rights back there that they didn't even know about, that they weren't administering. And so there's a lot of history back there, and a lot of places that I'm gonna go explore next summer because I found all this cool historical documentation about where this stuff was originally being diverted from and to. But this and all these beaver ponds back here, Lily Pond, everything like that, that's all artificial. Those are all man-made reservoirs. And they were made back in the 19-teens and breached in the 50s, but they were made for the historical dredging operation on that parcel that happened in the teens. And they were running out of water this time of year, so they started building reservoirs. So yeah, those are the 3 court case applications we have going on. And then I just wanna point out a brief things so that you guys know where I'm at and what I'm working on. Because the barn pond discussion is incredibly complicated, right? There's no part of it that's straightforward. The water flowed that way through Twin Lakes Village for decades, at least partially. And then, you know, at this point, it doesn't matter if it was natural or not. It was a big change when the state did determine that Barrier Creek is actually Barrier Ditch going through Twin Lakes. So the Twin Lakes residents wanted to request the county to designate these, or at least the Markham Pond, as fire suppression ponds. Fire suppression pond designation is a new thing in Colorado water law, and it's really unique because it supersedes and is exempt from Colorado water law as it existed to that point. And so it causes, in a place like this, it makes more headaches than it solves probably, because then we're designating an artificial pond as a fire suppression pond that then needs water all the time. And how do you do that when other senior water rights holders upstream of them can cut that branch of water off legally? You know, it gets really complicated. And so Rachel Zincanella, division engineer, she's an incredibly brilliant woman, and she's so busy, but she made time to come up here to Leadville to talk to the commissioners and all of us about this fire suppression pond issue. And out of that discussion, we came up with the idea of maybe we could turn these little ponds into storage vessels. And they're really small, and they're not gonna be, you know, significant, but for how small our portfolio is and how storage constrained we are, anything is significant, anything will help. You know, this is most likely like a third of an acre foot, literally. But if we can measure the water going in and we can measure the water going out, we could potentially turn that into a small storage vessel. And then if they needed it for fire suppression, by all means, come take it. But that way, it's within existing water law, it's giving a benefit to the county's water resources, and it's giving the Twin Lakes residents that fire suppression that they were looking for. And so if we're gonna go back into court, because this is gonna require a court change, I want to get this as a fire suppression pond, I wanna make this a fire suppression pond, none of this is natural beaver ponds, but this portion could be another potentially half acre foot. And then, we don't have any Twin Lakes shares, what if we had Triple Lake? So this is the old highway. And when they built the new highway, they started filling up, and so they breached it right here, which the beavers have since reclaimed, and they've made this into a very robust reservoir that's there now. And the state has analyzed it and says it doesn't have a legal right to exist, right? It's an artificially created beaver pond by an artificial dam of the old road. But if we made it into a storage vessel, we could give it a legal right to exist. We just need to be able to measure the water coming into and out of it. And so I've talked to Pat Mercer at the Forest Service, and he seems very on board with issuing us the special use permit we need to install a measurement device at the outlet of this pond. And this could be 5 acre feet, so we could get 6 acre feet out of these 3, right? Let's just go back to court, let's get them all taken care of at once, is my opinion. And the other thing we're gonna do, since we're gonna go to court once, we're gonna get it all done. The golf course. For the last year, I've been working on a grant project that's been studying the DeLapp ditch. And the DeLapp ditch comes off the Arkansas main stem, goes behind the Sugarloaf campground, and it used to historically irrigate the golf course lands and parts of the Colorado Outward Bound and everything like that. But now it ends at the golf course, and the golf course has these 2 head stabilization ponds is really what they are. There are several water rights that use that DeLapp ditch, but the DeLapp ditch is dilapidated. So you can't use the DeLapp ditch for physical conveyance of water for those really valuable water rights. And as I'm looking to claw back augmentation water from the golf course, which uses over 50% of our water, any and every water right available to them needs to come in to play. Parkville owns a water right that comes off the DeLapp that can irrigate the golf course. And then the state has told us that there's an existing water right with the land. Our lawyers have not found it, but the division engineer telling us it's there is good enough for us to move forward on exploring it a little bit more. So we could potentially irrigate up to 50%, more than 50% of the golf course with these 2 other water sources, if we had the DeLapp ditch to deliver the water. Since we don't, what we wanna do is, when we go to court, we wanna adjudicate, instead of taking it from the DeLapp ditch head gate, we take it from the well at the golf course, which they already do with our augmentation water. And then we don't need to touch the ditch. It's still DeLapp ditch water. It's, you know, we pay for the loss, the 1.4 mile transit loss, because we changed the point of diversion. But that's that's really insignificant compared to the water gain we're gonna get from putting it into play. So that's the 5 things I wanna touch on in our court case. Is the Parkville DeLapp, County DeLapp, and then those 3 storage vessels. And if we start now, we'll get there in 2 years.
Who owns the land where those ponds are at Twin Lakes. Is that state land or?
No, so one is on the Markham property, so they call it the Markham Pond. And then this is on Forest Service land.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then the big long one, Beaver
That's
Pond?
all on Forest Service.
Forest Service?
Yep.
Beyond that, oh, you're right, okay.
And so we already have an existing, because of our augmentation station up on Mount Albert, we have an existing special use permit with the Forest Service, so we have an existing relationship with them. Pat was kind of taking a step back until the barn pond issue got a little bit more resolved before he was, gonna go gung ho on a big plan. But this plan is like, I'm presenting him something that's a win-win for everyone, so he's like, okay, we can maybe work with that, so. He just didn't wanna give any bias to one party or another because it's really contentious down there right now, right? There's two parties that are both well-heeled and they're both dug in and, yeah, button heads. But yeah, I call that Triple Lake, or at least Josh, the new deputy director, he made that up when I saw it, showed it.
Triple Lake?
Triple Lake. But I wanted to open up for more specific questions if you had any.
So I think to Melissa's point about kind of determining the priority of the use of the water, that was really managed in establishing the uses and kind of that slow phased rollout. I mean, those were some outcomes of really looking at the priority, and I know that not everybody that's on the planning commission now was part of that discussion, but that was something that you did in lockstep with the planning commission, right?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if there's anything else you wanna share on that, but it was very intentional about how, we have some trepidation about the EE Hill properties, just by the nature of how those properties were created and lack of infrastructure. So we are working on that, we're working with our new county attorney and just trying to come up with some ways to deal with the lack of infrastructure and planning that went into the partition of that land. But that will be an area that'll be highly impacted by this additional ability to use the water. So we have some challenges, from a land use standpoint in those areas that we'll be working on, and this resource may complicate it a little bit.
Yeah, like without saying too much, there's a pending land use applications coming your way. And that application wants to be on the water plan. And so I've let them know from the very beginning that they will be a guinea pig. And that, they're gonna kind of be forging a new path, and so just to expect an extra level of scrutiny for that.
What's holding up the IGA? Just, they need to review the language, kind of?
Yeah, we have to fire a lawyer on it. So it's literally been like pulling teeth. Yeah. It shouldn't, it's really.
You said that the terms have sort of been agreed
The terms have been agreed on. Me and Aurora went back and forth for a year, just, is this a good idea? Can this work? And so I haven't heard it from them directly, but I know anything that got to me from Aurora has already been through their legal team. Right, these all been signed off. It's in our ball court, and for a long time it was me pushing Aurora, please give me something back, and we're in the opposite thing now, where they're like, hey, where are we with that?
To kind of summarize the advantages of the new IGA, it's really the ability for Aurora to account for the evaporative loss, the additional storage.
That's correct, so it's that agreement with Aurora will make it so that we can use Hayden for storage. So that we have any storage, and then if we get the other places, that's great, but that's what we have for right now, without any court cases. The advantages are 365 a year delivery, so that, they can deliver it whenever we need it to, more flexibility in the point of diversions, and the Hayden Reservoir parking agreement. And that's really as significant as it is. Everything else is pretty much similar to the way that we've been operating with them in the past.
But it also increases like our overall because it'll cover that 25% of the total evaporation that we're at Hayden right now.
That's
So
right.
it also kind of.
So I'll start being able to build that as we get the plant up and running. It'll probably take 2 years to actually get running and working correctly. But then I'll be able to take whatever evaporative loss I'm saving and build that into the reserve or the enterprise allocation, I call it. Yep, and so that's, as we, and then you get you get the golf course more water, then that water that they were using, then that comes back
Goes
to the
back
enterprise
into it, yeah.
allocation. And so it's like we have a small allocation that I continue, to wanna grow, but as we're growing it, we're also contracting parts of that out.
It helped me to hear you explain, and I know we had talked about this kind of previously, but that reminder that the 3 augmentation units on an individual parcel accounts for a large home the QR is gonna exceed a duplex. You can't have an ADU with a duplex, but you can with a single family home. But the other unit could be outside irrigation. So like if you're it can't be, I thought I saw that.
Livestock. Yeah.
That's what it is.
So it's like you can have a duplex and an ADU, a big house and an ADU, or sorry, you can have a duplex and you know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Duplex
There's
ADU.
the light.
You can have a combination of those, but one of those is for an ADU.
Okay,
So if you want a livestock well, you can't have a house that exceeds 1 EQR in size.
okay. And just for the planning commission clarity, the zoning code won't allow an ADU and a duplex, but you'd have the livestock for the additional, so you'd have the 2 for the duplex and then the livestock.
I'll have to check to make sure that the duplex doesn't preclude livestock if there's one allocated, because I think, the regulation was 1 is tied to an ADU.
Oh,
So if you build a duplex,
Then you
You only
would
have
exceed
2.
it, okay, that's
No cows for you.
No cows for you.
No cows with the duplex.
I'm
No
sorry, but,
cows.
so right now, Aurora delivers you 40 acre feet.
and they
There's-
will,
There's an existing agreement for that.
that's correct.
But Water Court will modify how that agreement gets exercised, or the details of it, so you can store it or take it at multiple locations and,
No, that's all covered by our IGA.
the IGA.
Yeah, the water court
Okay.
case is settled,
Okay,
and the water court case gives us
It's the
40 acre feet.
IGA they're working out right now.
Yes, sorry, the IGA that
Thank
covers
you.
how we agree, the mechanisms of working with Aurora and the mechanisms of how they deliver that 40 acre feet. But the 40 acre feet and the source of that 40 acre feet is defined by the decree.
okay.
And that was, it was originally done in the IGA with the city of Aurora when they acquired the 2 ranches, right?
So the city of Aurora, and this is where the history gets so convoluted, but as far as I can tell, Lake County owned the Hollenbeck Ranch. Do we own the Hayden as well?
I think,
Lake County owned the Hayden Ranch, the Hollenbeck Ranch here, and we bought the Dairy 1, Dairy 2, and Dairy number 3 water rights with it.
Yeah.
Aurora bought the land and the Dairy 1 and Dairy 2 water rights. We kept the Dairy 3 water right and the Dairy 2 ditch. And we kept the Dairy 2 ditch without any water because the point of diversion is underneath the dam footprint, so it gives us leverage.
I think that was a brilliant move.
Yeah,
That's what the county did, like long-term, 5,000 acre feet, wow.
and that's at that, if they expand this design of the reservoir, it could be more than that, it could be less, but it's, what I heard is that they were going pretty good on it until they got farther along with Wild Horse Reservoir, which is a much larger reservoir project in the South Platte.
Yeah.
And so Aurora has told me, they're like, we're not even talking about Fox Creek right now because we don't want them to get conflated. We're under NEPA on that one, we don't wanna confuse the two. And I think they were like an Aurora City Council meeting, and it was like, these people don't know anything about the mountains, like, don't tell them, don't get into the super nitty gritty, because we're just trying to paint the broad picture. If these guys are managing a $500 million budget, let's not get into the details 25 years from now. But yeah, so they're developing Wild Horse, and once that's done, I expect them to fully pivot towards getting Box Creek done again. But, you know, there's a lot going on in Box Creek too, and they need to study the viability of the dam, let alone anything else, so.
Well, thank you, that was awesome. It's really, I love that, learning about water, it's so weird.
We didn't like blocking your view, yeah.
Oh, no, you weren't at all, no, it was great.
I can't.
And Bryce will share a slide deck with us and we can share it out if you want it.
Cool, no, it was awesome information.
It's always great to, I love that, cause I can always go back and refer to it.
And please let me know if you have any more specific questions and everything. I get so bogged down because I deal with this every day that like sometimes I forget what's complicated and what's not, and I'm just like, oh, it's all part of it.
Complicated.
And it's all moving parts, and there's also just a lot up in the air right now as we negotiate the IGA, as we get a new water attorney online, as we deal with, you know, concerned citizens that need water needs that we have to figure out how they work with this really complicated water law we got in Colorado. But that, I gotta say, like, coming to the conclusion of turning the fire suppression ponds into storage was like a revelation for me, you know, like, yes, this is the way that we can make this work for both parties, for all parties, not just, there's many parties down there. And this is gonna make it make sense for everyone, so that we get something, and we're not giving something up to get something, right? I believe that this is a positive sum game we're playing for.
Will it actually get used for fire suppression?
If
Hopefully not.
required,
The answer is hopefully not.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah.
But the availability would be there if they
Yeah.
could figure out the pumping and the.
Yeah, there's a dry hydrant already in it,
Yeah,
and Dan came to that meeting and Dan was very insistent on fire suppression.
the need.
The need and the support, and he's just all for it, and so, you know, just how to make this work.
Right, so then we get the benefit of the storage, they get the benefit of the.
Yeah, and then if they ever need it, and we give up a third of an acre foot for them to put out a fire, like, great, you know,
Right,
fine.
that's a good compromise.
Thank you, Bryce.
Awesome, okay, well, moving on, I think we were going to, spend like the next 45 minutes, just, we've got 2 more goals and strategies that we identified. We're gonna pass out
Are you
those.
okay with that?
Are you
Yeah.
okay with that?
Okay.
Sure.
Okay, and we've got Jason online, Elsa and Andy with us. And so we can just do those 2, and I think instead of kind of the painstakingly way that Casey went
Oh,
through,
thank you.
reading each one, I was wondering, if you all think it's a little more efficient to go ahead and read through them and do those 2 choices, the one that you think is really low hanging fruit, and which one it would be a big win. Can I read it real quick, just so I know which. And so we're specifically thinking that we jumped off at
I think we got through 3.
through 3. So delivering housing, locals can access and afford, I think were where we landed last time. And so tonight we would just be looking at doing 4 and 5 and giving everyone just a little bit of time to read through 4. So that sounds like a good plan, instead of going through and reading every one.
Like, we're reading the
The strategies.
potential, yeah,
So the 4th goal, I can read the goal, and then if you all wanna just look at the strategies, identify
what our
One-
top 2 would be.
yeah, the top 2, one that feels very attainable, and one that would really make a significant change in the community, and then just be willing to kind of share out what you think those are. So goal number 4 is help locals stay by preventing displacement, preserving attainable housing, and making existing homes safe, healthy, and affordable for the long term. So if you wanna just look at the strategies that are listed, and we'll take a few minutes to do that, and then share out.
Do you think it would be worth identifying anything we think that isn't working here?
I think I think we could, I think that's a good
Yeah.
question to ask if there's anything in here. So let's start with the first 2 items. And then after that, we can circle back and just say, is there anything in here that doesn't resonate? that isn't tracking, you know?
Mhm.
And then maybe we can also talk about if there's something missing.
CLTs, what was that?
Community land trust, so
Oh,
where the development owns the land and the cost is just associated with the improvements.
Jason, yeah, go ahead.
I just wanted to see if we have some kind of a definition for what is considered long-term housing. Is that like
More
a
than 30
minimum of,
days usually, right?
Right, yes, so in the context of long-term affordable housing, so
Oh, I see.
that would just be basically putting on like a deed restriction in perpetuity, some different mechanisms. So long-term meaning making sure that it's not just affordable for a one-time opportunity, but that it has a longer-term ability for remaining affordable. So these are strategies associated with
so
ensuring that it's.
long-term isn't in reference to how long somebody would be living there, but if there was turnover, that it would continue to be affordable for subsequent.
Locals,
Exactly.
yeah.
So
Got it.
it's
Okay.
making our housing stock have some long-term affordability throughout the community.
Routine seems out of place.
Mhm.
GDH.
I think that's Gunnison Valley Housing Authority.
Yeah, I think so. Other than they're just saying maybe safe or something,
So,
but
yeah, could burn down and there's less housing.
yeah, I would say that there might be a few super important things missing from this list. But I have admittedly not been at some of these meetings.
And I would just mention, you know, these strategies have really been created through both stakeholder groups and community resident comments. So they've really been co-created. They're not just our stakeholders or staff or you know, you as planning commissioners. They've really been all co-created, so some of them may need, you know, some further information and details associated with them.
Yeah, and if we're missing something,
Yeah,
right? I think that's
absolutely.
really important right now.
So I think first we're looking to test them, so we'll start with that first exercise. Then we can go into, you know, what's missing or what's not working. Give you a
Need
couple more time,
Yeah.
give you a couple more minutes, and then we'll start in just a minute. Okay, everybody kind of ready to? Share, does somebody want to share something on the list that you think is kind of an obvious, easy, attainable strategy? Yeah, see any that you think are. Elsa has her hand up.
No, it's just the little,
Oh,
the
it's
little
our
Zoom
cursor.
thing is the little cursor now.
That's okay.
Listen.
I can go if you want, but I was like, oh, I don't have anything.
8B is one that makes sense to me just as far as potential acquisition or covenant programs, and really I would lean more on the covenant programs protecting attainable housing. And I think, and obviously I'm gonna have a lot of opinions about this subject, but I think the thing that I find really interesting is that, there, you know, a lot of this is about home ownership, it feels like, and not a whole lot about, and maybe it's not supposed to be for this particular one, cause it's help locals stay here, and the goal is later on their homeowners, but I just, you know, I can't, like, this went along with my second one, Explore Acquisition, also went along with the protecting manufactured home parks, but I would further that with also current multifamily or apartment complexes, because we already lost the one on Mount Massive, and I think that was a really big mistake on our part to allow that to be bought and turned into condos to be sold. I can't stress how much I think that we're gonna lose long-term housing very, very quickly in this community, because we're relying on that all to be mom and pop owned properties, and the landlord protection rules along with the pricing of homes like makes that not as desirable anymore, so it's really, really tough to find investors who are renting out their homes long-term, and so we're losing those fairly quickly, and they're not being replenished by new owners. And so if you're only relying on something like Eagles Nest to support your long-term rental housing, we're in trouble. And we allowed that unit to be sold, and I think that there should be protections just like that on manufactured housing parks. It's like, similarly, I think we need to really look at what the regulations would be on allowing any kind, cause I know there's been how many developers in the past have come to us and wanted to do the same thing with Eagles Nest. Like, I think I've talked to 6 people over the last 15 years that have been like, oh, we're gonna buy Eagles Nest and turn them into condos, and I mean, that would be devastating for this, I mean, that's why Climax went and bought a motel, because they can't depend on there to be rental units, and I think that's a really big piece, so that's a big one for me, and I would love to extend that protection to manufactured home parks to also include rental units, and then the covenant programs to protect locals. Those would be my 2.
Heather, do you wanna kind of educate us a little bit, I mean, just generally, you don't have to give us all of this, but when you talk about the landlord rules and how difficult it is now to own rental property, can you just expand on that just a little, how it?
Yeah, so, you know, it's just what, in my opinion, happens when you overregulate things. It's like you have these really great intentions to protect a bunch of tenants, but in the long term, it may not have that effect. There's a lot of unintended consequences. So the new regulations of the state, as soon as a tenant's been in your unit for more than 12 months, if they could be a terrible tenant, as long as they are not egregiously violating the lease, you have to renew your lease with them. So you have a trouble tenant that calls you every week for something and maybe, you know, is doing all of these things, you're gonna deal with them the whole time. So we've had people give up their rentals for that. That's the only way you can not renew the lease with them, is if you're not gonna rent it anymore or you're gonna sell it, something like that. The other piece to that is, it used to be that after 10 days of non-payment for rent, you could start the eviction process, and you could typically plan to have somebody evicted through the court process here within 30 to 45 days. That process now is probably at least 90 days. I forget what exactly the new regulation to start eviction process is, but that's 90 days of a mom and pop owned individual owned investor real rental property that they're covering the bills on, the tenant's doing who knows what inside the house for those 90 days before they can even get them evicted, then they're gonna take back the house, fix it up, and try to do it all over again. Nope, you've lost that unit, you know, so there's just a lot of those kind of things now that have made it really difficult for landlords to say, yeah, we're gonna keep doing this and it makes sense to do it, why, when they could just cash out and get the price for the house. But again, they're not gonna resell it to an investor because the purchase price right now is too high and to match our rental rates. So your return isn't there, it would be just purely a labor of love, or I wanna own a Leadville real estate property in order to be doing that, cause you're not gonna make enough money to cover that price tag, so if that helps.
It helps me for sure to better understand that challenge of why we're losing some of our rental properties, because it's very difficult. There's a lot of unintended consequences associated with some of those protections that were put in place, and so it attributes to us losing our multifamily rental housing stock. So that's really good too. I think that was definitely, thanks for the need and also what's missing. That kind of covered both. Anybody wanna share out something else that they see in there that really resonates as something that seems like a strategy that you think that would make a lot of sense to enact sooner than later?
I agree with Heather on what the most impactful thing would be, was the attainment and maintaining properties that are available. I just don't see anything higher than that for me right now on that list.
Okay, great. So really maintaining and preserving what we have.
I mean, outside of rentals, you have property owners, you know, property taxes are gonna be continue to be a problem. But I always see the only way to offset that's with industry, taxing industry.
Yeah.
And if you wanna rely on tourism and you're not gonna put a tourism tax on, or you've gotta be able to make these existing properties affordable, or they're just gonna leave.
So that kind of opens up that, let's see, also support home safety and energy efficiency improvement, or identify funding mechanisms for incentives, financial assistance to homeowners to make improvements to meet the safety code, or
Improvements for property, I mean, the biggest problem's gonna be property taxes for them,
yeah,
but to me, you know, they've gotta make that payment. In order to do that, you've gotta offset it with something else in the budget.
right, absolutely.
And Ann, are we looking at this as a whole community or just where our purview in the county is?
I think that you can have on your, I think both hats, whatever tonight you wanna have, I think it's really valuable for us to have your planning commission county perspective. But if you'd like to share something as a resident that just is community-wide, I think both, so I would say both.
Yeah, cause in that vein, you know, number 10 with the costs of like not only the taxes, but if there are people that were somehow able to make the dollars work and buy a house here, and then now to try to fix it up, it's not a huge secret, but I have a lot of opposition against what the Historic Preservation Commission's regulations or unintended consequences are having on people to have to get roof material approved, to have to decide what kind of front door they're putting on their house. You know, can it be this one that looks just like the olden days, or it has to be this $4,000 front door? You know, I mean, that's just gonna make it really impossible for people to continue to fix up their homes, and so they'll choose not to, and that creates that unsafe environment, either landlords or homeowners, right? Like they'll just keep their family in these homes and not do the improvements because the barrier is so high and it's pretty expensive, you know, and then the contractors are having to add on the fact that they have to deal with the city, and you know, that's increasing the cost to get that stuff done. So I think it's really important to both the county and the city. I mean, right now I can point to the city has something actively causing that problem, but if we if the county, you know, if we're creating a comprehensive plan that we're gonna work off in the future, is to always be really mindful of our regulations, that like, yeah, this sounds really great because that would make it really pretty here and it would have these things and it would protect these things, but what else is it affecting? And I think it's just really important that we have something written in there that's mindful of, that if we're gonna create preservation type requirements, that we're doing it in a way that's sustainable for our actual residents to comply with, because right now it doesn't feel like that's the direction it's going.
So long-term affordability preservation is potentially in conflict with historic preservation.
Yeah, and it's like historic or anything, right? If they're like, oh, well, we really want this to be in line with nature, we don't want purple houses in the middle of the woods, that's fine. That probably not a big thing, but if you're like, but it all has to be this really super fancy type of siding, then that's a problem, you know? And so I think it's the making sure that when we're creating regulations, whether it's county or city, that it's in a way that's sustainable or weighing the value of it, because I don't see that weighing out at the moment.
Or, you know, the worst outcome of that is gentrification.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's the inevitable outcome.
Well, good, that's really good, that's great information.
I think
we're
that's getting
hearing that.
expressed quite a bit.
Yeah, I think that we're hearing that.
I see like thumbs up.
Yeah, but thumbs up,
Jason.
Jason's gonna second that.
And Jason, you have your hand up too.
Yeah, I was just wondering if there's a way, like, for incentive wise, if you could go by a standard like the LEED standards, that would then you could you know, if somebody were to get those standards when they're building, if there could be some kind of a longer term tax incentive or tax break on the property taxes, so you're not having to say, well, you put the siding on your house, great, we're going to give you a tax. That might be kind of hard to track, but if you could get a LEED certification or something similar in the residential space, that would make it easier to track for then a builder to get some kind of property tax incentive over like a 10-year period or something. Might make it easier for both the building official to track, you know, I don't know, that's just kind of just throwing
Yeah,
out
I
some
mean,
thoughts there.
yeah, I think incentivizing what we're looking for without burdening it on those who can't, I think that's what we should definitely be doing. And I feel that way along the lines of preservation also. It's like incentivize what you want, but be careful about how you're requiring it. And so if you're able to make a nice big fat incentive for somebody to do it, then, and you're offsetting by things like property tax or something like that, then that's fantastic, because then they can potentially afford to do it, but you know, leaving the option for, yeah, I think that's a great idea, if it was doable. Elsa. Go ahead, Elsa.
Thanks. Yeah, sorry, trying to unmute. Maybe this isn't the right place. I have loved everything that's been said. I fully agree. And like the rentals are so needed in this community, will continue to be needed. And there's a lot of pressure on rentals going away. And the people who are in rentals, those prices just continue to go up. And I just wonder if there's also a place where we can create some sort of capping of rental increases. Maybe that's too radical, but like right now there's no regulation about how much you can charge somebody. And even if your property tax goes down in the next, assessment or valuation session,
No, that is one that passed with the new state stuff. I don't know that it was by a certain number, but that quite
Yeah.
honestly, in my opinion, that's one of the ones that's also caused a problem.
Okay.
Because it's not matching So like if you have that tenant that stays in your house, if you've had them in there, so a lot of landlords right now are doing 11-month leases. So they can make sure that they like the tenant, not a problem, but as soon as they're in for 12 months,
Yeah.
then you can raise their rent, but it's only by a certain amount. And before it's considered unreasonable, and it's not matching some of the expenditures or there were, in our case in this town, we had a lot of people that for a lot of years were offering really super reasonable rental rates. And then with the recent tax increase and stuff lately, like too much information, but I own a rental house that I paid $175,000 for, that's how much is mortgaged right now, and we break even on that. We
Yeah.
can't, I can't rent it for enough money to make any money over the month. Like that's, like people aren't really in tune with how much money taxes and if you have any kind of financing on it whatsoever, like there's no way to make any money on it. So you're just in it for like the equity build let down the road, which a lot of people
Or cashing out.
aren't able to do it, and so they're gonna cash out. But it's not a monthly income generator, so if you were to cap me on how much I could go up on that, then I would have to sell that rental.
What are some of the other levers you think we could be manipulating to help with, because like I get the market forces that are pushing all of the rental prices up, and I'm wondering if there's anything we can actually do locally that relieves any of that upward trajectory. If it's not through rental capping, totally respect that, but like I think that burden is just putting pressure on the whole people's entire systems,
Yeah.
you know? So
Well, and so where the money makes sense, or where people, so it's probably not sustainable for there to continue to be individual homeowners offering these long-term rentals, is where I'm
right,
going. Like, that's just not
right.
gonna continue to be sustainable. So the answer for this county is to be, in my opinion, advocating for more rental units to be built than affordable houses to be built.
I
Like,
totally agree. Yes.
and that the
Yes.
focus should be on multifamily apartment complexes or incentivizing ADUs out and getting all of that type of really easy, like ADUs are such a low hanging fruit, and we've only just recently started incentivizing those again. And it was like for so long, like the city for a while there was like, no ADUs, and so I
Yeah.
think it's stuff like that's the only way it becomes affordable, like an apartment complex also. If there's somebody who manages 50 units, they can afford a little bit more of that, like, oh, this unit has to be tied up in eviction for 90 days, but these other units are all rented, right? Like, they can afford those waves more than an individual homeowner. So to me, the county needs to be focusing on figuring out who, maybe not the county, but the county, how we can incentivize somebody to come here and build multifamily, and then protect the stuff we already have from getting sold to be turned into condos.
So grant programs and things like that, if developers can access grant programs, if we could offer some sort of incentive on the land that we've got.
So we just recently did a presentation to the Board of County Commissioners, which I think that they felt was really beneficial, and that's public-private partnerships. A lot of times there are grant opportunities to help with the capital stack for developers that wanna bring in multifamily. And one of those is like the land banking grant, where we can apply for the grant to offset the cost of the land. There's several different opportunities, but those grant opportunities are only available to cities and counties. And so exactly to your point, the public-private partnership may be a really powerful tool to be able to use.
Yeah, just to protect that rental level, because I don't think the individual housing stock is sustainable, other than for like a higher class of renters, that have more money. It's just not gonna be the affordable option,
And
unfortunately.
programs like low-income tax credit, LIHTC projects, like 8% LIHTC projects as well, would be a really good way that's our lower incomes. Some of the public-private partnerships might look at more our middle different, but those will all be tied to AIMLAs.
Mhm.
So Elsa still has.
Go ahead, Elsa.
No, sorry, I didn't put my hand down, my bad.
I was like, you just keep talking.
This is all really great, and taking notes and adding those into some strategies that we can take back, so.
So what are the timelines on things like public-private partnerships and grant programs? Cause it seems like this is an urgent need, but those things take years. So is that,
Right, so this is our comp plan, this is our 10-year kind of outlook, and so I think these strategies will be important now, they'll be important over the next 10 years to continue to look at things.
Yes.
So, but there's work being done right now, so I think it's continuing on,
yeah,
with the work that's doing, but keeping that, our north. Really our guiding light on what kind of strategies, and like when we get those development applications and you get that very first finding, is whatever this proposal in line with the comp plan, we can come back, you can always easily find that finding.
I think it's important also, if you're trying to bring in a timeline on it, benchmark successful to people. I mean, there's communities that have been successful. Salida is successful in my opinion.
Yeah.
Benchmark them. They've got some development that's taken place over the last 4 years down there by 50 heading into Canyon City that I think is remarkable. Don't know how they achieved it.
Yeah.
But we ought to go benchmark it.
Well, and to that point, there's a lot of creative, and so I feel like what we're even speaking about now are like the typical, right? But like Salida RV Park, my parents happened to stay there this last month, and it was kind of cool to see what they've done with that place in the way that, and it may be a little harder because our climate's different, but I think there's some mitigation efforts you could do there, but what they decided to do there is it's not just the RV park, you can rent a space for your RV long-term,
And tiny homes.
or they have tiny homes that you can buy, and they're really cheap, and then you just pay similar to a manufactured home park. But it creates this space where, we have a lot of people talking about, like, people are living in their cars, or people are living in whatever because they can't afford XYZ. Well, if we created, or if we incentivize somebody to create a similar park situation, then somebody can live in their van, but they're now living it here in this place where they have to meet certain standards to make sure that it's safe and all of those things, but at least then we're providing a safe place for them to be living in their van if they choose to do that with their heater all winter and dump station
you
at
put
the RV
limitations
park,
on
and
it,
yeah,
that's
you do all those things, but
Travel trailers.
it's just a way to like, so Salida's approved that because it's hitting a lot of different income and affordability, as well as being a place you can just pull your RV up for the weekend and stay there. So it's kind of like those kind of creative ideas, I think, are something else we should consider. The other one is what Climax has done with the bank building and the motel is like, do we incentivize, maybe not existing structures as much, but do we incentivize or offer incentives for companies who want to provide employee housing? Because the way my brain works is the most important locals to keep here are our workforce locals. And so if I were to prioritize them, that's the top of the tier. So if we have employers who are willing to provide or are eager to provide their employees housing, how do we create systems that allow them, or incentive programs or something like that allow them to do it in an affordable and quick way? So it's just kind of trying to come up with some of those, like, and I don't know how you word that for this, but I think it's being,
And that's the movement nowadays too, people aren't, the shift is away from home ownership, people wanting to have flexible living conditions.
well, yeah,
Tiny
that's,
homes and RVs or whatever you wanna call them, that is an acceptable means for a lot of people who like to have 6-7 jobs a year and go to different places in the country, but that's an incentive, that's an option, but we ought to be benchmarking these communities. Another example, which is probably not the best example, is South Dakota. Oil and gas exploration. Yeah, you say it, but they
Yeah.
had to come up with an approach
Mhm.
and make it compatible with the environment they were putting those things in and with the community that they were gonna be in.
Yeah.
It's just worth benchmarking these communities just to figure out how they did it.
Mhm.
Yeah, I would say that's definitely some of the work that's happening already, but making sure that absolutely wherever we can gain momentum or see it in real time, how it's working in a community, that's always a tremendous benefit.
Does the county have the ability to react quickly if an opportunity pops up? If
So
property
the-
becomes
the-
available
the
or?
You will be getting a code amendment on November 10th. We have a public hearing scheduled for November 10th. Our next public hearing will be an expedited review for affordable projects. So yes, we're changing our code. We're looking for expedited streamlined reviews for projects that hit the benchmark of affordability. We just got our AMI petition granted for Proposition 123, where we participate in, we made a housing commitment to increase our housing stock under that, and so for the 10-2 project, we received additional funding in the amount of $980,000. And so this will, this expedited review is a standard that is meant to support more affordable housing and less turnaround time, less processing time. So that amendment we're bringing forward to you for introduction into the code. And in exchange for getting that done before the end of the year, or by the end of the year, we'll get another $50,000 back from Prop 123 to put back into our housing projects. So yes, we're making big strides on trying to do that. It is a little daunting for a planning department of 2 sometimes to do those things. So we're trying to be very mindful about how we can ensure that we've got that kind of turnaround time, but that will be ours to ensure that that happens.
I wanna do a time check for like 20 minutes to 6.
Yeah, great, but this is, you guys are really on a roll, so we can do a time check. Probably need to end in about 7 minutes, but I love this. This is, we're capturing so much that really isn't within, is much more specific than in, that is in here, so. I'd love to, if anybody has some kind of, you kind of hit all of those points. You kind of had like what looks like it could be done pretty quick, what would be a big win, what's missing, kind of, you know, as you know what we wanted to do is kind of think of that. In our wrapping up, is anybody that hasn't spoken that would like to, or something additional that would like to capture, another strategy that really helps preserve what we have housing stock wise, or make our locals have more opportunity in.
No,
You know, I realize there is no one size fits all solution. It's gonna be a multifaceted approach for the whole housing subject. But I mean, I've been on the tiny home train for a long time, and I think anything that we can do to keep that conversation going is worth talking about. So that's just my 2 cents right there.
yeah.
I like that tiny home train.
Mm-hmm.
I do have a quick question for you all, or just a, on the tiny home conversation. Do we think that communities of tiny homes, you know, of creating that as, like you said, it's a multifaceted approach, they're going to appeal to a certain demographic within our community that really is supportive, but introducing tiny homes through like certain sites like this, site specific, makes more sense than introducing tiny homes throughout the community in neighborhoods that may be a little concerned about property values and not, you know, that's kind of a hard topic right now to think that you have to preserve those as much, but zoning by its nature is one of its main goals is preservation of values, so.
Well, I think the problem with blanketing the allowance all over is that if I am correct, it would be either we just reduce the square footage size to allow for them anywhere as long as they meet full building code and they are attached to a foundation, but most people who are looking to do a tiny home thing still want them to be mobile and not attach them to a foundation. So to me, that would mean that we leave the code the way we have it, but instead we have more allowances in our use table that somebody could do a conditional use permit for, like a community, a tiny home community, such as this Light RV Park or something like, some of those, communities that people have created with a bunch of tiny homes. And we just allow that to be an option in the use table. That would make the most sense to me, because otherwise, if you allow temporary structures, you're gonna get into the mess of, is it a tiny home or is it a trailer? And it'd just be a nightmare. So I would think you would have to do it in the way of like you're creating a community, unless you're attaching it to a full building code.
Of course, then we gotta worry about, water rights too at that point.
Yeah.
So
So
we're kind of
the
restricted on two ends,
Yeah,
so.
Andy,
I agree with Heather. I think if we did a blanket change across the county or large areas, it would be really hard to keep a handle on sort of, once you open that bottle up, how are you really going to enforce the new rules that are in place? How are you going to make sure everyone's adhering to whatever type of guidelines we need to put in place to make sure these structures, these trailers, whatever they're using, are safe? I think keeping this in a specific area would allow a better, the county, city, anyone to have a better handle on how this is working and make sure people are safe.
yeah,
Great, thank you. So more like our manufactured home park.
Jason, go ahead.
I was just gonna add the Tiger Run Resort in Breckenridge. The way theirs is structured, I believe, is that owners can purchase lots, but they can only stay on it for a certain amount of time per year. And when it's not in use, then that time is rented out to other travelers for certain periods of time. And so it allows others to use that, but essentially the land is paid for by whoever owns that lot, and then they get a percentage of the fees when other people stay there, say, months at a time or whatever, but it's still capped. And so I don't know if that's like the Salida Park that you're talking about, if they do something similar, but it offsets the cost for a developer to have to own all the land, and it pushes it off in little mini parcels to the individual owners of those lots per se.
Yeah, I think the Salida one is just, owned, and then, but I wanna say the county, I don't know, they did something to help the developer create that because it was, but I think the Tiger Run is the way they have it set up, my understanding is it is more geared towards your like seasonal vacation, second homey type people, which I'm not sure that's our goal. But you could do something similar to what you're saying, Jason, and like still say that a developer could still sell the lots and it's part of a community. Like, I think back to when, there was somebody looking at that parcel that Jack was gonna do once, and he was gonna do a cluster home community, but then somebody else was like, well, could you do the same thing with tiny homes? And so if you allowed somebody to do a tiny home subdivision, and that was allowed in our code as long as it met certain requirements, then it could be similar, you're selling off the lots for people to park their tiny home on, or, so I think you could do something similar and have it still appeal more towards your primary occupant
So
rather than second home.
what is the demographic of tiny home occupants? Is it singles? Cause I can't imagine it's families with kids.
It's crazy though, there are some,
Could be
I mean, yeah, there are some, there's quite a few, I would say mostly it's 1 to 2 people in them.
Yeah.
But I will also say that that's the majority, like that's the most common tenant we have, is a 1 or 2 person. That's why ADUs are so important, because your most common rental demographic is that 1 or 2 party
And I think you can put constraints on these communities, probably Slida has, you
Yeah.
can have ownership of it, you've gotta occupy it, I don't know, 9 months out of the year, make it up, but it's, whatever the constraints are, to gauge it towards what you need in your community.
Mhm.
You're not looking for anti-snowbirds that wanna come up here, and if that's not what you want, you have to gauge the rental and the lease agreements such that,
Yeah.
you know, you're not incentivizing those people to come up and have second homes,
Mhm.
unless you
Tiger-
allow them to rent them out.
Yeah, to your point, the Tiger Run space is like $400,000 for
Yeah.
an RV spot,
Mhm.
500,000, I mean,
And
it's
we'd have
kind
to,
of
we'd have to drop
unbelievable.
that price, but,
Yeah.
Yeah, that doesn't get us anywhere.
but that's, well, yeah, that doesn't. But if you were to incentivize developers and cap the price on a lot, you know, there's ways to do it.
Yeah.
Sure.
Go ahead,
You
Jason.
could even have it as a common interest community.
Yeah,
So that
exactly.
the property
Kinda like a
is,
condo.
yeah, you know, that it's only the improvement, or you're only renting the improvement, you don't have to own the land.
Mhm.
To take that cost out, to make it more affordable.
Could an ADU be a duplex? Would that be helpful if that was an option?
An ADU be a duplex.
Yeah, explain.
Accessory dwelling unit is just a unit that's accessory to a main.
Primary use.
Right,
Primary.
but could that be essentially, as a standalone, could it be a duplex, even though it's an ADU, to offer more space?
So the ADUs.
Yeah, no, I think you would just be building a duplex.
Yeah.
Because ADU is typically just one accessory unit. Beyond that, you're just putting a bunch of units on a lot.
Our code specifically right now disallows an ADU in a duplex.
Well, you're saying a duplex that also has an ADU, but what he's saying is the ADU is a duplex.
Oh,
And you can, yeah, I think an ADU is just a one unit thing. And especially when we get into tricky things like water and infrastructure and parking and all,
our building
Impacts.
code, or I mean, our business zoning, we did an amendment to allow more than one accessory dwelling unit as long as it serves our affordable housing needs or it has an environmental benefit, like in the village of Twin Lakes, when we had one septic system for 3 dwelling units. So that's the only zone district that we allow more than one currently, but
yeah, but you know, incentivizing or loosening, to develop duplexes or multiplexes is a great.
Yeah.
That makes tons of sense to me. The ADUs are just really nice for the individual homeowner that's like, hey, I can offset my own a little bit, but also provide a rental unit for somebody. I think the ADU is meant as more of a smaller.
We're talking about
We shouldn't limit ourselves either to tiny homes, think in terms of container homes.
Yeah, just in general, those like communities that maybe are less than a normal. Yeah,
I'm gonna have to run, so I'll let you guys do adjournment and take any other notes.
okay,
I just have to pick kiddos before 6, so this
Good
was
luck.
great. I know.
don't speed.
It's at the intermediate school, I got 6 minutes. Okay, thank you all so much, really
Bye.
great info.
Bye, Ann.
Bye, thank you.
Anybody have anything else they wanna say before we cut you off forever on this topic?
Nothing from me. Thanks.
Alright, everybody feel productive enough for the evening?
I think so, yeah.
Smarter, a little smarter.
A little smarter, I definitely feel smarter after his meeting.
Yeah.
Alright, well, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I make a motion to adjourn.
A second.
Alright, all in favor, aye.
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 Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.